All right, that should be good. Yep, there it is.
Microphone muted.
I swear to God we were on time. I swear to God we were on. I have a witness that we were on time.
We were on time.
We were on time. The stream was diverted, and we were about 10 minutes into the rundown when I was notified that for some reason we were streaming, but for some reason it wasn't to the show, and we didn't entirely know why, and I looked into it, and it's always interesting. This happens every now and then. It's always interesting when you know you're streaming, you know you're live, but you have no idea where. None whatsoever. So we found it. We do have that stream, but it's privated, and we're good. So I will try once again to cover this, and Joe is being immensely patient over the fact that I'm just rattling off a whole bunch of what's going on while he's sitting there, and so now he's got to sit through it again.
So why don't we go to the, bring up an issue and then talk about it.
Perfect.
At one at a time, then that'll like get things moving a little bit more, I think.
I think that's a good idea. I think today in particular we wanted to cover, now we're going to be covering Delta tomorrow. We're going to have on a guest to cover exactly what Delta is, what it's doing, and why it's an issue, because I think that's important. But obviously we're going to cover that today. We're going to cover the Delta numbers today, a couple of things in regards to the Olympics that we wanted to talk about. If we wanted to bring it up, although there isn't much new on it, we've already discussed it, but of course the Trump and the soft coup, and COVID numbers, and I don't know if we're going to cover the state of Belarus, but we got a couple things. Where would you like to? Oh, and Cuomo, of course. So where would you like to start?
Yeah, I guess we were talking about the police and. This really was like the fallout from the soft coup.
All right. So we have a super chat from Jake 40 today on Overtime. Nick talks alternate universes. Yeah, if we were on time, I'm aware that that's probably it's more likely than not that you're hallucinating. We really were. All right. Well, we know that Trump has. We have written notes now that Trump had directed. I think it was the Attorney General. Sorry, I don't actually have that in front of me right now. To certify or not to decertify the election, but to declare that the election had been a fraud. And then he said, "quote I and the Republicans will take care of the rest." So all he needed was the some form of legitimacy from the government. They said no. So. Giuliani came out, I think it was yesterday, and said he's comfortable losing his license in defense of Trump. He is that. He strongly believes in not losing his license, going to jail. A big difference. He is comfortable going to jail for Trump at this point and for what he's done. So, I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Well, the thing that gets me about that is that Trump has already thrown Rudy under the bus a couple times. And
yeah.
What I don't understand is that these lackeys of Trump, they keep trying to show their loyalty by throwing themselves on their swords, and he never ever rewards them for it. They always take the fall, and if anything's going to splash on Trump, he always just pulls the rug from out from under again and again and again. So he's got a history of not being loyal to them, demanding loyalty from others, and not showing any loyalty to anybody else. I don't understand why anyone thinks that this time it's going to be different. Why they keep doing that? It's almost like when if you think about it in a lot of movies where the evil guy and he treats his subordinates like shit, and you always think like, oh, that would never happen because no one would be that fucking dumb, and yet he does all those things, and no one turns on it.
Yeah.
I can't understand it.
I think it's a kind of fanaticism. And I think that when you're inside, when you're from behind that mirror, you see yourself as serving a higher purpose. And I think that the Trump organization, the mangas, are exhibiting some elements of cult-like behavior. I'd be very curious if somebody applied the bite model to the inner workings of that organization. I have to believe somebody's done that, and I'd be very curious to see how it works. We're obviously very tribalistic, and it doesn't have to be a religious organization to have cult-like qualities, very strong cult-like qualities, and that's what I'm seeing when I look there. And it's actually very frightening because those people really are willing to sacrifice themselves for this greater good. And it's always interesting when somebody kind of pops out of that. Michael, oh God, I forgot his last name. Oh my God. The guy who actually did the negotiation between, I think it was, oh God, somebody in the live chat will have it. He flipped on Trump, and he was part of the one who was in silencing Stormy Daniels. I remember her name, of course.
Yeah.
Michael Cohen. That was it. Thank you. So, and it's just sort of like, it just sort of seems like when they break and when they get out, they're like, oh, wow, I can't believe that's where my head was at. So I don't know. So, and now there's just going to be a trigger warning. And so we're going to discuss something as a fallout to that I think needs to be discussed and is difficult, which is the emotional toll that this has had on police officers. Now, police officers have an extraordinarily high suicide rate as it is. We have discussed quite a lot about the faults of the police department in the U.S., which was not that long ago declared a organization in violation of human rights by, I think it was the UN, if I recall. It's been a while since we covered that, but that was an interesting show. So I'm not sitting here saying they're not without faults, and I think we're all in acknowledgement of that. But it's also an extraordinarily difficult and stressful job, and we do demand too much of them. And I think we're going to discuss that in just a minute. But two more of the officers who responded to the attack on the Capitol on January 16th have now died as a result of suicide. This brings the total number of suicides amongst those officers engaged in protecting the Capitol to 4. The second one of these officers, Jeffrey Smith, was a story that I found compelling. He was defending the Capitol during the attack, during the very moments that one of his officers had stepped into a revolving door to try to stop it so that the mob could not get through. The mob just started, 1, 2, 3, heave, 1, 2, 3, heave, to try to get the door to spin. But the only way to do that would be to go through his body. So he was literally being crushed by this mob trying to get into the Capitol. He texted his wife at 2:39 p.m. saying, quote, "London has fallen," as the Capitol Police were being overrun. Moments later, he heard a shot fired and heard the call of shots fired out over the radio. The shot was actually striking a woman who was trying to get through broken glass, through a door through the glass on the door to try to get into the building. She was shot and killed. He, at the time, as did most of the officers, assumed that what this actually meant was that they were coming under fire. Shortly thereafter, he was struck in the head with a pole, both across his head and across his face shield. He was taken to the police medical clinic, and he was put on sick leave as a result of this. His wife reported that her husband was in constant pain after this. He refused to leave the house, even to walk the dog. He would not leave the house. He would not talk to people, and he would not watch television. Quote, he was not the same Jeff that left on the 6th. I tried to comfort him and to let him know that I loved him. She said, I told him that I would be there if he needed anything, that no matter what, we will get through this. I tried the best I could. He was ordered back to work on January 14th. The next day, he grabbed the lunch that she had prepared for him, got into his car to go to the afternoon shift, and on his way there, shot himself in the head. His wife is trying to get his death to be declared to have been in the line of duty in recognition of the fact that it was a direct consequence of the attack and of improper mental health follow-up afterwards. The 4 officers were Officer Lebengood, Officer Smith, Officer Hashida, and Officer DeFreitas. So that is where we stand.
You know, the thing that is most distressing to me, I mean, it's bad enough that everything happened, and it's bad that the police are going through what they're going through. But these are the people that are, you know, the Trumpers. They're supposedly the pro-police people, you know, the law and order people. And they're the ones that were howling, you know, during the BLM protests and trying, you know, back the blue, back the blue. Well, now that these cops went out there and they testified and said what happened to them, how this mob, this traitorous mob, you know, attacked them, and they're attacking the cops. I mean, Laura Ingraham was out there, you know, and so the rank and file are attacking the cops, the talking heads are attacking the cops, and even some of the politicians. So it's amazing how, you know, all of a sudden the back the blue people aren't backing the blue when they actually really need it.
Well, yeah, please. I'm sorry. Was there something else?
I mean, it just shows the hypocrisy. Like, you know, they didn't really care about the police. It was the police were a prop, just like when they don't go on about the troops. They don't care about the troops. The troops are a prop for political gain.
Well, and it's interesting because during the Black Lives Matter protests, the right was very adamant that these are cops. These are the most important people ostensibly in this country, for which I think there is a valid argument. And, you know, how could anyone question them? They have these difficult jobs and so on and so forth. Now they were defending the second, possibly the first, depending on how you choose to look at it, and depending on who's holding office, admittedly, building in the country, most important building in the country, and nobody seems to care. Or certainly not the right doesn't seem to care that these people were doing their jobs and defending the fucking country. Yeah. These men were not defending the 7-Eleven. They weren't defending homes. They weren't doing the things that officers do all the time that this country needs to function. They were doing what the military does and defending the fucking country. And I don't care even if you think that it was just a protest that got out of control, which is one of the dumbest fucking things I've heard in quite some time, and I've heard a lot of stupid shit.
Or they were like tourists, like the idiot from Ohio, you know.
Yep. Yeah, and that's you know what? Great, fine. That's you want to be an idiot, be an idiot. They didn't know that. What they knew is that people were trying to break into the Senate, and their job is to protect our congressmen with their lives, and that's what they did. There's no argument with that. So I don't. It's not.
You know, well, and the other thing that was interesting, because obviously there was a testifying, you know, earlier last week, and it's interesting how this dovetails into the fact that basically all roads are leading to Trump. That, you know, the National Guard didn't respond because they weren't allowed to, and it was going to take a call from the White House to call them out, and that call didn't come for like 5 hours.
And it didn't come from Trump.
Right. And as we talked in previous ones, it's very likely that Pence violated his authority to get it out there. But you know, that's the thing. So basically, and that's what made it worse for these guys, because there was no backup. You know, what should have happened is the National Guard should have been called out with weapons and Ford McCorden, and they could have restored order and helped support these guys, but they're basically left to the wolves for like 5 hours.
Yeah, and well, and of course, all the things that we've already reported on. Pence refused to get into the limousine with the Secret Service because he thought this was a coup, and he was not sure that the Secret Service agent would not assassinate him. Secret Service in the United States is, I'm sorry to say, probably not quite the first in terms of best defensive force in the world. They're probably second to the Israelis, but it's a close call, and they're fucking good.
They're up there.
They're up there, and the vice president refused to get into the limousine with someone who had sworn to take a bullet, to be a human shield and take a bullet. That's how bad shit got.
Yeah. I want to address something that Bob Sadler in the chat said, Yup Lake in Ohio. So basically he's making an allusion to Kent State. Kent State, where there was actually peaceful protest. There was no reason to deploy deadly force when it was done. The fact that, it's kind of amazing that only one person was killed in the attack, Capitol raid. And again, these were people committing acts of violence against the Capitol.
Well,
but
please.
I was going to say, if nothing else, at least if they showed up in force, it probably would have dissuaded most of them. If most of them would have backed off.
Well, you're forgetting, though,
So
just in defense of his comment, you're forgetting the gallows that they erected at Penn State in order to talk about the people they were going to hang. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. I don't think they did that at Penn State. Were there gallows at Penn State? No, I don't think there were gallows at Penn State. No. So there may be a couple of differences, just a fucking couple.
Yeah. It's a really shitty comparison.
Yeah. Well, it's a good soundbite, and honestly, by the way, that's not a topic that isn't worth discussing. I mean, genuinely, it's like, okay, how and when do you draw the line? But they erected a gallows, and they were looking for Pence to hang him. This is not in dispute at this point. You can sit there and see the news organizations. So this is not in dispute. They've got the guys that were planning this. They've got the people who had the twist ties to fucking find him, and they've got the people who saved Pence's life. So I see a few differences. I also want to say, I would like to, on In Time, I think we're talking about doing some shows on mental health because it's just something that's not covered in general and just needs to be destigmatized. But this is a profound example of it's just not being dealt with appropriately. And I think Mowdy had come on and he suggested this too, which is getting fighter pilots to admit when the stress has gotten to them is virtually impossible because it's a very big macho attitude. It's a very big. So there's another one that actually there's a high suicide rate because they cannot show weakness. They absolutely cannot and will not show weakness. So they've had to find alternative ways to tell when these pilots are stressed beyond their limits, and it includes like breath sensors that can sense how there's a change in their breath to suggest that they're stressed because they won't fucking admit it, and it's just
that reminds me that one thing that I think would be at some point we should probably do a show on policing. And that's actually part of it too. The whole when people question the concept of toxic masculinity. That's part of it. It's not just men being brutes and blah, blah, blah. It's also detrimental to men in that, if you actually need help, but you're in this culture that basically says, if you don't, you're a horrible guy, you're a weakling, blah, 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 and you're not a real man. Well, that's detrimental because you're a human being and sometimes you need help.
And there are legit straight up reasons why that evolved, why we became that way. It was necessary. Well, not necessary. It helped survival at a time, but it's also why our life expectancy was so short then, and it's part of why men suffer the majority of the heart attacks now. I mean, there's a reason we are toxic to ourselves, and our culture encourages it. But that's all another time, place. Amy, good to see you. I did want to address real quick. I think his name Robert Batty is he's an accountant who busted Hovind and was responsible for Hovind going to jail. It was dropped in the live chat that he was reporting domestic charges against Hovind. If it is what I think it is, which is I saw earlier, it's a story about his wife who said that I think he body slammed her. Hovind body slammed his.
Hovind?
Yes, Kent Hovind apparently body slammed his wife and engaged in at least one or two other acts of abuse. That's the charge, but the charges aren't actually. They're not. I don't know what the date is, but anyways, wanted to clarify that because I said I would in live chat. All right, so where would you like to go on to? We're going to discuss the Olympics, COVID, which everyone's looking forward to discussing, and Cuomo.
Yeah, the Olympics, I mean, like I don't really care too much about the sports, the athletics themselves, but I do pay attention to, the side stuff that goes on. And some of the big things, two of the big things for me, one was, the hypocrisy of, like the Norwegian handball team, female women's handball team was fined because I get the picture there, because they were not wearing bikinis. They chose to wear shorts, which is exactly what the men's team wears. But there's this ridiculous rule that the female team has to wear bikinis, clearly not for any sports reason. This is just a double standard. It's just sexism. And you would hope at this point, in the 21st century, that we would have worked our way out of that, at least for something big like the Olympics.
What was the justification for wearing the bikinis, or for forcing them to wear bikinis?
That's how we always do it. It's usually the argument from tradition, and then a bunch of they try to tie it to athletics, but then you say, well, if it has to do with the athletics, then why aren't the men's team required to wear banana hammocks? We don't require that. So if shorts are perfectly fine for the men's team and it doesn't interfere with their athletics, then why is that an issue for the women's team? And as you and I talked about this before, when we thought we were streaming, even if it did affect theirs, that's their choice. And if any, I could see if their home nation, if their sponsor fined them and said, hey, you're not, we're sponsoring you and you're not doing what you're supposed to do. But to actually have the IOC to do it, that has something to do with it. The IOC generally prohibits people from wearing things that are advantageous, unfairly advantageous. But wearing shorts over bikinis is definitely not advantageous. So
yeah, that makes sense. So if it gives them an advantage, yes, it absolutely, they have the right to ban it. If it doesn't, well, that's their choice as the athlete. If they want to do something that's going to make it harder for them, go right ahead. Yes, please.
We ran into the same problem with the some of the black swimmers, because they wanted to wear, for people who have big hair, or dreadlocks or anything like that, to wear there was a different cap, and there's no evidence that it provides any advantage, but they just were not allowed to wear it. You had to wear, and so what ends up happening is the people's hair, and even if you have like a little bit of an afro, it doesn't fit under the standard cap. It just doesn't work. So you're actually disadvantaged by using the standard cap. So all this would do is restore you to the same level. You still actually be slightly disadvantaged because you're still going to have more drag with all that extra, that extra bulge on your head. But it's just and basically it may actually, they're starting to reconsider it now because there was a backlash, but it's clearly not for any good reason other than bigotry.
All right. So we have a $5 super chat from Sinister Porpoise. She said that her family is watching and would like to know the source for the claim that Mike Pence refused to get into the car with the Secret Service. The post comes from a Pulitzer Prize-winning Washington Post journalist who is making that claim in a book. Actually, the book is already out. I have not read the book. But there was an article on that book. The article you can find in numerous sources. Newsweek is the one that I have right now. And in Newsweek, they said that the journalist was claiming in the book that Pence refused twice to evacuate from the Capitol building. So he was staying in the Capitol building. He was ordered to evacuate by the Secret Service, who actually can order him to do that under certain circumstances. Their authority actually exceeds his. let's see, he refused twice to evacuate from the Capitol building because he was concerned that his leaving would vindicate the rioters, and B, that the Secret Service agents were compromised and that he could be shot by one of them. Let me find the actual, there was a, let me find the quote here. Let's see, the exchange was reported to have happened at 2:26. It was Agent Giebels, who asked the president to get into the armored limousine, and he said, "I'm not getting into that car, Tim. I trust you, but you're not driving that car." Yeah, I noticed that, and I didn't want to mispronounce it, so I didn't say it for obvious reasons. So now that, and it's important to note that the Secret Service denies that conversation happened. But this is a Washington Post journalist, two Washington Post journalists actually, who cite sources that they say it did. And in general, since the Washington Post is reputable and tends to get it right when they call these things, I'm inclined to say that it happened. That's the source. Hopefully that works. Let me just double check and make sure I'm back in the live chat, because I did want to. I appreciate the super chat, and my hope is that answers the question. But I'm now disconnected from that. We're just having technical difficulties like cray today.
And I found Timothy Giebels on LinkedIn.
Oh, okay. So he was the Secret Service officer that purportedly asked, and he refused because he felt that, ostensibly, there was an insurrection going on, and that these Secret Servicemen may kill him. So that was the report in the book. I have not read the book, just the Newsweek article that said that that's what was in the book, and citing excerpts from the book, again from two Washington Post journalists. All right. So having covered that, let's see. My hope is that it was WAPO, I think. All right. So having covered that, the other thing I did want to mention about the Olympics, and this is just interesting, and I got to tell you, I'm ambivalent about this. I do understand the Olympics' position, but it's a problem. They want to stay impartial. Was it yesterday or was it today? Today is the 4th, so it was actually, I think it was today. One of the athletes today, I think it was today, he was a fencer, bronze medalist, Race Imboden, who admitted that a X marked. Jake did the. Oh wow, I'm tired. Yeah, I will have to. Wow, thank you, Porpoise. Okay, yeah, I will correct that in a second. Race Imboden admitted today that an X marked on the back of his hand during a medal ceremony at Tokyo was to protest Article 50 or Rule 50 of the Olympics, which says that they cannot protest any political events. So he is looking now at having his bronze medal revoked for having an X on the back of his hand. This harkens back, or this has been reminding people very much of the 1968 Summer Games, where the International Olympic Committee expelled two members, Tommy Smith and John Carlos. They got the gold and the bronze in the 200-meter race. They were from San Jose. They were track stars, and they were also part of the Project for Human Rights. And during the anthem, did what you see down here. This is a picture of them holding up their fist in solidarity and in protest to apartheid in South Africa. They were trying to raise consciousness about basic human rights, and were expelled from the games and had their victories revoked. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
It's they try to put out this idea that, well, it's to take the politics out of the game, as if there's no politics if otherwise, which of course there always is. Plus the fact that, it's a big stage. And look, I get, first of all, yes, they can make whatever rules they want. However, it seems to me that, if there's a famous expression by a quote from Elie Wiesel that always take sides, because neutrality favors the oppressor. So to me, they shouldn't, they should not have this rule, because it's not like, it's not like your usual everyday politics. This is people trying to call attention to some big problem on a world stage. And yes, the IOC has the right to deny them, but I think it's a huge mistake to do so. Basically, like I said, they're just favoring whatever oppressive forces the people are protesting against.
And the correction. So I had said I had, a $5 super chat I misattributed to Porpoise, who I'm always chastising and denying fish to. I haven't been a good host, but in this case, definitely my bad. I misattributed a $5 super chat to Jake from Jake 4D to Sinister Porpoise. He had asked about Pence not getting into the limousine and being afraid for his life, so we cited that source. Thank you for the correction, Titans, Sinister, and Jake. So we've got left Cuomo, and I'm tempted, just because we have it on our Discord. I'm thinking that the show's going to run long, and it's already been a little depressing. There was a country that has been run by a former Soviet army soldier, and he is running it literally like out of 1984, and we have some footage from that. It's a little creepy. That's also on our Discord. He literally had a 2-minute hate on opponents of the regime. It was a very Orwellian, but I'm kind of thinking we may want to stay away from that. It's on our Discord for people who are interested in it. We'll see whether or not we get to it. But what we have left is COVID and Cuomo.
Yeah, I guess Cuomo first. You want to run that down?
Well, let's do that. So, New York Attorney General. Do you know how to pronounce her first name? I'm really Latita. Latita? I think it's Latita.
New York State,
I think it's Latita James. New York. Yep, New York Attorney General. I think it's Latita James. Letitia James has completed her investigation into the allegations of sexual harassment made against Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York, and she has concluded that he has sexually harassed multiple women in violation of federal and state law. She highlighted a pattern of harassment in which he would ask women if they were in relationships. He would ask if they would be willing to cheat on their partners, and then he would also admit to feigning excuses for inappropriate touching. Gave an example where he had touched one woman's breast and said, if asked, I'm going to say that I saw a spider on your shoulder. He also, they cited one instance where a trooper who had received multiple, against whom there had been multiple instances of sexual harassment by Cuomo. She was holding a door open for him and had claimed that he took his hand and ran it across her stomach from her belly button to her hip. Many of the women here said that they felt they could not speak up because it would put their jobs in jeopardy. All told, this report lists 11 women it believes were sexually harassed. This is a This is a civil investigation, meaning there are no criminal consequences for this at this time. This information can be used for a criminal probe, but it itself was not one. The Attorney General's office has said that there is a criminal probe already underway as a result of these allegations. U.S. President Joe Biden has called for Cuomo to step down, and an impeachment probe has already begun and is nearing the end. It is expected to return results. Right now, it is still in the State Judiciary Committee. They are expected at this point to recommend impeachment and specific articles of impeachment, which are expected to pass, leading to a trial. We have covered exactly what that means and how it goes, but at this point, the expectation is, even though his own party is in power, any trial would succeed in removing him from office. So at this point, it is expected that it's a matter of time. But if he does not step down, he will be removed by his own party, he has come out and stated categorically that all of these charges are false. I saw part of his declaration. I was bothered by a number of elements, which I can get into in a few minutes. But he said they were all either misrepresentations of the truth or outright lies. So that's what we have.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you got 11, I have a hard time believing that at least the bulk of it, you know, I think the bulk of it's true. You know, because one, you could say, okay, you know, they're a disgruntled employee, whatever excuse that people usually make. But when you start getting into double digits, you know,
So, yeah.
it's like
you start getting
and
start with 4 or 5, it's double digits.
You know, you get double digits. I mean, you know, because so people will say, "Oh, about day in court." Well, that's the thing. Like you said, there are no criminal consequences currently, so there's not going to be a trial in the legal sense. But that doesn't mean, you know, in fact, most of the time when there are allegations, there's not a criminal trial. There is an investigation, and then there are actions taken. Whether they believe the allegations and they take action, or they don't believe the allegations and they take no action, or whatever. And then there may be consequences if someone tries to sue afterward. But the fact is that, you know, there is a process. There is due process going on here. And again, this is the state attorney general of his party. So this is not somebody with an axe to grind. You know, it's not like it's somebody from the opposite party or a third party who has an axe to grind to take him out. If anything, she'd want him to stay. If she'd be more likely to be in the bag for him if it was Marjorie. And the fact that she's coming out and saying, "Hey, look, we looked at this. We believe the witnesses are credible." And that's the thing. There may have been more. But
yes,
these were the 11 that were credible. And so that's the thing. There may have been, we don't know how many there were, but there were at least 11 that they found credible. And so there's been a process. There's been due process. And he's not going to be convicted in a court of law, but it doesn't matter. And I'll tell you what, as someone who, from a policy perspective, I've liked him a lot. I was very happy with the way he handled the COVID, you know, with the exception of the senior citizens, you know, homes.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, he handled very well. I like the transparency he had. But you know what? When you have this many credible witnesses coming forward, and the state attorney general of your own party has looked at what's gone on and the behavior you're accused of, and they say that this is credible, I think it's time to go. And, you know, for the good of your party, for the good of your state, and for the people that you've harmed, the best thing to do is to go out as gracefully as you possibly can, rather than drag this out. Because when you think about it, I mean, these allegations have been out there for a while, and he kept thinking, like, he kept hoping they would go away. And for a while, it looked like they were going to. But no, because apparently where there's smoke, there's fire in this particular instance. So, sorry, dude. I thought you were a cool governor, but you're apparently a shitty person.
Well, yeah, and I think there's great examples on both sides. We all remember the Duke's Cross team, which was a prosecutor just went crazy, and 4 boys were destroyed over fake allegations of rape. And we also all remember Bill Cosby, who nobody could have predicted was doing what he was doing. And I have to confess, if I had heard a woman coming out with those charges against Bill Cosby, I'd have been like, well, and it was that there were so many, and it was just so credible. It was like, but you know, it's a very tough. Nobody likes it when an innocent person gets railroaded, but it happens, and there are innocent people who also get raped and sexually assaulted, and so we have to sit and make a judgment in some way or another. It is possible he's innocent. It's absolutely possible. I have to say, for all the reasons you outlined, I just want to finish this sentence. It strikes me as so unlikely because of all the and there's even more, quite frankly, if we want to pile on, just credible reasons why it's really unlikely. And if he's innocent, well, then a mistake has been made. But as he has to go, he is done.
Well, especially, I mean, because it's part of his problem too, as far as trying to defend himself now, is that over the past several months. See, now he's saying, oh, it's all lies, or just about all lies. In the past, he was trying to put this out as misinterpretations. So he went from, oh, well, that's the stuff happened, but didn't mean what the person thought it meant. Which, by the way, doesn't really absolve you of the problem either,
Yeah.
because it's like, well, yeah, sure, I grabbed her breast, but I didn't mean it sexually. Well, that dude, it doesn't matter. You're not supposed to be touching people in the breast. But the fact of the matter is now he's effectively changing his story and saying it's lies as opposed to before when he was basically saying it was excusable. I mean, even to the point where when he tried to defend himself the other day, apparently he put out like a tweet with a bunch of pictures of him hugging people, consensually, including his mother. I'm like, yes, of course, where no one's accusing you of sexually harassing your mother, you rotten piece of crap. I mean, it's so insulting to everyone's intelligence when you do that, and that to me, probably more than anything else, convinces me that he did it, because it's such a ham-fisted attempt at defending himself. Because it's kind of saying, well, like sometimes it's okay to touch people. Like, yes, sometimes when the person says it's okay, and when they don't, you're not supposed to do it.
Well, and I see that going both ways, only because it's complicated. It doesn't look good, I admit, and I think what I think the argument he was trying to make was, well, I'm just a very touchy-feely kind of person, and I do this with everybody, and it's sort of like, let's assume for a second that's true. Well, it obviously does appear to be true. That doesn't mean, first of all, that he didn't make mistakes and that he shouldn't, he still has consequences, just like you said, that he has to suffer for it and based on what's going on. And even if there was absolutely no, and some of the things that he's purported to say, it doesn't absolve those. And you end up with that situation where it's like, well, you can't use as a defense, well, he didn't rape 30 women, so why do you think he would have raped the one? Which is kind of the argument that he's going off into. Having said that, I've met people who just are socially unaware and they don't know, and then you kind of explain to them there are boundaries, whatever those, they violate all sorts of boundaries, and there are people who need work with this. But I think that's a defense he should not be making for any number of reasons. And if he wants to make that in court or some other, okay, go ahead. But I don't. The way he did it, struck me as a little creepy. Again, doesn't mean he's guilty, but I didn't. And then the other thing that he did was he started talking about the officer who was accusing him, and started talking in a very personal way that I felt he should not be doing from someone who was accusing him, and just sort of very intimate, and suggested that at least an intimate personal relationship had developed as a result of her discussing past trauma that and I'm just like, it felt like it almost felt like he was doxing. I don't know if that information's already out there. I assume it is, but regardless, I was just like, you know what, this is, I stopped watching. I was like, this isn't, no.
And also, if you think about that case, just say for the sake of argument that because they've been close and they've been talking about her trauma, that they have this close personal relationship. Well, if anything, the fact that he was trying to mac on her, that makes it worse. So you're saying, okay, you saw a vulnerable person who that they've gone through trauma, and you went for it anyway, knowing that it's likely to affect them more acutely than anybody else that you might do. Somebody who hasn't been through trauma, they might be pissed off, but they might brush it off. What a jerk! Oh, he's handsy, he's an octopus. Well, someone who's been through trauma, and you do that to, you're re-traumatizing that person. So that's even worse. So that's the thing. His defenses make he are actually digging him deeper. That's what gets me. Plus the fact that, again, he's still this person's superior. So again, it still would be, something that you should be really, really cautious about in the first place, because I'm not saying that you could never have a relationship between a superior and an underling, because I know some people feel that way, but you better be very cautious about how that proceeds, because you're going to be creating a situation again where people feel that they can't say no, or they can't get out of it because that you're the superior.
Especially where he's working. I think I don't want to say that it's okay in a private sector, but especially if he's working as a government official, he's representing the rest of his constituents, and to be in that position and be getting that kind of intimate relationship, at a minimum, strikes me as inappropriate. At a minimum, and inappropriate is not a impeachable offense, and it shouldn't be, but it's inappropriate and has to be, there's a lot of issues here. It's sad. I think you're right. I love the guy, but yeah.
Well, also, if you go look at it from another perspective, like you mentioned, like obviously there are people who are just gormless, that they go through life and they just don't know. Well, hell, even we talked, in the past, Biden, where he used to put his hand on people's shoulders or whatever, and look, people told him, hey, look, that's not cool, and he stopped doing it. But the thing is, like for someone like Cuomo, he can't legitimately say he didn't know that was potentially, inappropriate. That's the thing. Like you're the governor. You don't get to be socially awkward. You don't get to be all the other things that they might excuse the rest of us for. You're the governor. You're one of like the highest ranking people in the whole country. So you're the governor of one of the largest states. It's what the third largest state, or third most populous state anyway. You don't get that. You don't get to do that. And all your underlings have to go through training about this. How do you not know that this would even if he wants to believe that it wasn't wrong, he should at least understand the optics of it.
Yep. That's a spectacular.
And for that reason, that's why he doesn't deserve to be governor anymore. Because if you're that politically dim-witted, then you probably shouldn't be there.
Well, again, he has to have a higher standard. It's not like he's running for president. We actually, yeah. Well, no, but I was just like, if he were running for president, I think it would be okay if he, not by personal, but just by precedent. Obviously, if he were running for president, he could grab women by the pussy. He could pay off hookers and do all these things, but he's not. He's a governor. He has to have some respectability, I guess, in this age. I'm not bitter. All right. So, and I really hope people realize that I'm being facetious, and I think that Donald Trump utterly brought disgrace to the White House, that even if you brought Obama, one of the coolest presidents in history, back, couldn't wipe the unmentionable stains from the desk of the Oval Office. All right. Yeah. Perfect. Well, so and then so we're going to discuss COVID tomorrow. We have I've been under the weather. I'm still 90% confident we can do a show tomorrow, but my daughter brought home something that isn't COVID, but whatever it is, we've been sick. So
tomorrow isn't so hot for me. I'm recording a podcast with Tracy Harris tomorrow at 7. So I don't know if
it was what works best for the guest. It's going to be on end time, so we're going to be doing it as just part of a regular. We have a guest coming, so we'll see what happens. But that was the day that worked best for him. So we've got that scheduled. Okay. But at the height of so we'll be discussing specifically Delta and now Delta Plus that we're going to have to contend with. But at the height of the COVID pandemic, which was considered to be, it depends on the metric you use, but basically January 7th of this year, the U.S. had 2,800 new cases reported every single day. 280,000 every day. We are now facing that exponential increase that you get when you get a disease like this. We are in the start of the curve. Anyone who looks at it, I didn't actually get a screenshot, but anyone who looks at it, you just see the exponential rise, and we are now at the height of that. Now, 1 month ago, on July 4th, there were 2,900 new cases. 2,900 new cases. Today, exactly 1 month later, we have 149,000 new cases. Which is now actually at the height, at this just starting the ramp up of this exponential increase. We are now at more than half of the peak levels on January 9th. And there are some places that are starting to sort of either close or enforce mask mandates, but there are some that are also still loosening restrictions. We are, despite having over 48% of the U.S. vaccinated, these numbers are climbing and climbing rapidly. There is a 139% increase in the 14-day average for cases, a 92% increase in hospitalizations, and a 50% increase in deaths. The reason we have only a 50% increase in deaths is because that's a significantly lagging figure. It's 2 weeks behind. 2 weeks from now, it will be the same as these numbers. It's pretty close to a mathematical certainty. That's how it works. We are up over 140% over the previous 14-day period for deaths, and wait a minute. So wait a minute. It's up to be up. No, I'm sorry. It's projected to be 140% in the next 14-day period, which would concur with the increase in infections. But what's interesting about this, and we've discussed this before, is the disparity between the two new classes, the people who have been vaccinated, the people who have not been vaccinated. By state, there is a wide disparity of how many people, what percentage of these states have received vaccinations and what percentage have not been focusing on vaccinations. Therefore, there are many states that are not seeing a significant increase, and the states that are seeing a significant increase have in some cases actually exceeded where they were at the height of the first wave, again on or around January 7th of this year. At the height of the first wave, Louisiana, which currently only has a 37% vaccination rate, had 81 cases per 100,000 residents. Again, 81 cases for every 100,000 residents. Now, today, they have exceeded 93 new cases per 100,000 residents, meaning that they have exceeded their record since COVID started, even at the height of the first wave, by over 14%, and their numbers are still climbing exponentially. Let's see. Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, and Missouri round out the top 6 states. And in counties from Sabine, Texas to St. James, Louisiana, we have seen increases from 300% to 16,000%. In the height of the first wave, again in mid-January, the number of daily deaths reported was 3,300. 3,000 deaths a day. Right now, it is projected that we will hit 1,600 deaths a day. That's half that mark in less than 6 weeks. If we continue on our current course, we will hit the hospital capacity or the hospital resource usage, including ICU beds and other hospital resources. We will hit 2/3 that mark in roughly 4 weeks. And the infection rate will pass where it was during the height of the pandemic in roughly mid-September. Children who are at present cannot be vaccinated but can get Delta from asymptomatic adults who have been vaccinated but can nonetheless transmit it. These children can get it from those adults. They have gone from 39,000 cases last week to 72,000 new cases this week. That's an increase of 54%. There's a wide variety of forecasts for the total number of deaths that we are expected to see at this point over the next 2-month period. It ranges from 20,000 to 60,000 new deaths in the next 2-month period if we do not do something about it. So, the only other story that I had seen that I wanted to cover, well, actually, I'll hold on to that. So, what are your thoughts on that so far?
Well, I'm just infuriated, quite frankly. We're stuck in this hell because a large swath of our population and the politicians that lead them seem to want to continue to act like the virus is a hoax, like the vaccine doesn't work. They want to act like it's all about personal choices, and yet they know nothing of personal responsibility. The fact that their choices are hurting other people, and the fact their non-compliance are why we're still in this endless COVID hell to begin with. If everybody could have complied, a year ago, we would have been well out of this. But people keep, I want, basically the people are selfish. They just I want to go back to life the way things were. So do I. But you know what? I know that if we keep doing this, that basically what's going to end up happening is that we're going to get, a gamma and an eta and there's going to be, all the way down to omega variant. And then we're going to have to do double alphas and stuff like that. So, and the thing is, unlike your garden variety cold that people get, you get something that something's more virulent and way more deadly, And if it starts splitting off like that, where we're going to end up in a case where right now, we take a flu vaccine that's got three, usually like the three biggest candidates. We're going to be doing that every year for COVID, although it's going to kill off way more people. The irony, though, to me, is that it's going to kill off the obstinate people. I just wish it would do it quicker. Because quite frankly, I don't have compassion left for people who are getting sick and dying, not because they don't have access to medical care, but because they're obstinate and they think it's a sign of toughness to not wear a mask and not get vaccinated. It's testosterone driven. Again, toxic masculinity at its core, because that's what the Republican Party is all about. Who's got the biggest balls?
Well, my grandpa is willing to die if it means that our economy keeps going the way it's supposed to, which frankly was never on the economy being okay was never on the table. Once this started, it was not on the table. And I think you brought up a really good point, which is the more this gets out, the faster it's going to be able to evolve and change into something new. That's just the way these things work. And so if we could have stopped it before it started evolving like this, which we actually had a chance to do, that was within our ability to do, we wouldn't have to worry about variants, and we could actually effectively eliminate it from the United States, and we could actually go back to normal. But it's out now enough. It's past the tipping point. So what we're seeing is it can evolve quickly, and it's evolving to defeat the things that we're doing to stop it. And that's how evolution works. And the more masks you wear, you got one downside, which is you are actually encouraging a mask-resistant variant of some kind to come out. Evolution's a bitch. And so we know this. So it's sort of like, we have to get ahead of it. We don't have a choice. There's one way to beat it, but you have to get ahead of it to do that, and that is now essentially off the table. We are facing what appears like it's just, regular shots of it, and because we don't have a consistent strategy, we don't have it's an opportunity that we lost, and it looks like we're going to be stuck with it for some time, and the genuine possibility of even worse variants coming out. We now have Delta Plus. It's getting worse. And we don't know. We know one thing: eventually, the vaccines will be insufficient. We'll hopefully be able to make new ones, but eventually it'll become insufficient. And this is we're not. I have a very hard time. I think you're right. I'm having a hard time with it as well. Sinister Porpoise says RNA viruses always evolve and mutate more quickly than DNA viruses, and if I recall, although it's been a while. They also tend to be much harder to, they're not as hard as, say, retroviruses to come up with but I think they have something in common with retroviruses. I forgot what it is. Maybe it's the RNA component. I don't remember what it is, but they have something in common with them that make them much harder to get vaccines for. We have done it. So.
Right. But, it puts us in a bad spot. I mean, and because here's the problem. If we get right now, the people who are vaccinated are still reasonably well vaccinated. We're starting to see breakthrough infections, but it's still on the nature of like 2 to 3%. But if that gets worse, I mean, and something like this that's mutating so quickly. I mean, I'm not being alarmist when I say this could be a planet killer.
Well, I think the chances are extraordinarily low. But there is a chance. That's how these things work, and there have been people who've been writing about the superbug that could potentially wipe out the human race. It's unlikely. It's really unlikely, but it is absolutely possible. It's not. We understand how these things work, and like many of the things that do either endanger the species in one way or at least endanger huge numbers of the population, we do have to stay on top of it. We know we can do it. We did it with polio. Right. It's absolutely doable. We have beaten things that were polio was far more serious than COVID, which may be why we actually bothered to deal with it. COVID, we're just going to let it become that serious before we're sitting there going like, hey, maybe we should take this seriously. At any rate, this does bring in mind one story that I'd heard, and I think we're going to wrap this up, which was there was a grocery store, and I'd like to Community Foods Market in West Oakland, California, that began enforcing a mask mandate in the store, and that they have reported that since then they have been getting verbally and physically harassed and assaulted by their own customers, and that it's become really a regular occurrence. One general manager had a soda can, it was full, thrown at his head. Another employee was attacked with a watermelon, and one cashier had an entire bag of groceries with canned goods and glass jars, which shattered, thrown at them. The store owner posted a message on Sunday saying, quote, "Please don't assault us." So I don't. I mean, one of the problems we've been talking about police officers being forced to do things that really isn't in their mandate. One of the things that really upset me, especially in Massachusetts, when we put on a mask mandate, was we didn't have the police enforcing it. So if you went to the grocery store, there were in Massachusetts half the people weren't wearing masks, despite a mask mandate signed and enforced by the governor of Massachusetts. And in cases where the people who worked at the store tried to enforce the mandate, they would get harassed, pushed, shoved. You are not going to tell me to wear a mask mandate, and they're not police, so it's not their job to tell their customers to wear those masks. But there's a mandate, and they're violating it, so they're kind of liable. It's a certifiable nightmare. You had also brought up about the hypocrisy, we were bantering about the hypocrisy on the right about these mask mandates and whether or not businesses should be allowed to say our customers have to wear these masks.
Right. That's the thing. When you start passing laws that prevent mask mandates and actually put the onus on businesses and prevent municipalities from putting these mandates on. Because here's the thing, the mandates give cover to the businesses, because then the business can say, oh, well, it's not us, that's the rule, that's but when you take that away from the municipality, plus the fact that again, the right wing mantra is always like, well, I don't want the government to tell me what to do. Everything should be as local as possible. Except when they don't want to allow the locals to do what they want. A lot of states have mandates that prevent people from having a higher minimum wage than the state minimum wage. And all this, so it's just bullshit. And that's why, again, I'm so fed up with this. I mean, because they're putting the rest of us at risk. And that's why, it's going to sound mean, but I'm like, if the virus is going to kill off a lot of people, I hope it's a lot of unvaccinated people who are obstinate and who are jerks and who are preventing this. Because if they die off quick, then maybe another thing won't mutate, and that's mean, but I don't care, because they don't care about the rest of us. So why should I care about them?
I certainly understand the sentiment. The other thing that I found interesting was I've argued with a few people on this issue, and they said, well, you know what? The government should never tell businesses that they have to require certain things of their customers. If a business wants to, of their own volition, do something like that, they will, and they'll do it when it's right. Businesses mandate that you have to wear shirts, and that you have to, for public health reasons, they mandate that you have to wear shirts and shoes. And I was just like, that's not the businesses doing that. That's the government saying you cannot serve somebody if you're a restaurant if they don't have a shirt. I mean, that's not the businesses saying that. That's the government, and you're saying it's perfectly okay. In fact, important, and as an example of businesses doing it, but businesses wouldn't do it unless the federal government made them.
Yeah. There's one really brief topic. I don't want to get too deep into it because it's something that could, really have its own thing. But I just want to, something that just came up today, and it just annoys me, and I wanted to kind of just hit it real fast if it's okay.
Sure.
Ohio, they had a primary today, or yesterday actually, Democratic primary in Ohio 11th district. So there were two candidates. Both, I went and looked at their platforms, both fairly progressive. One person's more progressive than the other. So the less progressive candidate was backed by the quote unquote Democratic establishment, and the more progressive was by the Bernie wing of the party. And the more progressive person lost. Nina Turner lost by 6%, by a healthy margin. And Cornel West, of all people, goes out there and says, this is his tweet, of all our blood, sweat, and tears, the great Nina Turner was too deep and real for the corrupt electoral system. Let's not lose hope, heart or hope. The people's struggle for dignity and freedom is unstoppable. And that infuriates me because basically that's very much like the maggots, like the Trumpers. Like our guy didn't win, so it must have been correct because the system is corrupt. I mean, if people on the left are going to start engaging in the same crap as the Trumpers, we're really screwed. You know,
Yeah.
because again, like a friend of mine, he kind of defaulted because he was like, oh, she's, the other one's establishment. I went and looked at her page. She's for Medicare for all. She supports $15 minimum wage. She supports some level of student loan forgiveness. I'm like, well, what's the fucking problem? Okay, maybe the other person wants to do more, but it's not like they're some ultra right winger or a neoliberal or anything like that. So we can't get into this every time our candidate doesn't win. Oh, they must have cheated. Somebody must have cheated somehow. But if our candidate wins, oh, the system was perfectly fine. You can't do that.
I think that's a very important point. I think that kind of divisiveness is great for getting people to vote. It works great if you need people on your side that you want, and then once you're in, it makes it very hard to actually do anything productive, and it also means that you're creating more enemies and dividing this country in a way that we're paralyzed. And it's I think you're right, and excellent.
Well, and it feeds the cynicism that already exists. We already have crappy turnout, generally speaking, for elections. And part of it is cynicism. And so then when you feed it, so if people do start to believe, okay, oh, it doesn't matter, blah, 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 then they don't vote. And then you get whoever shows up. And I would tell anyone on the political left, whether you're center left or far left or anything in between, right wingers all go to vote almost always. So if the left doesn't show up, the right wins. So if you want, whatever type of candidate, you want somebody who's more centrist, somebody more progressive, liberal, whatever, vote for that type of candidate and then vote for whoever wins, to get in, and then just try to shift the party in whatever direction you think it should be shifted in. But this idea that, well, we're going to, we didn't win, so we were cheated. And then we might as well give up and stop pretending we're activists and just go home and let the right wing take over, because that's what's going to happen.
Well, that's another interesting thing, which is that, and let's, Democrats gerrymander too, and Democrats do plenty of shenanigans. But if every American voted, every single American, we know right now, based on demographics, you'd have a very difficult time getting a Republican in any major office of consequence. There's right. A number of reasons for that, but if every American voted, and that's one reason why they tend to.
You still have some districts that are you still have some districts that are conservative, but you're right. Generally speaking, if you took the labels off and everyone voted, then you'd end up with a much more liberal / progressive agenda, because people are actually for the things, they don't like, either the representatives or the labels or whatever. And a lot of people don't get a chance to vote or are cynical. But it has me very worried. And again, the turnout in primaries is always anemic. It's like 17%, 18%. And so really any primary could swing any way you want if enough people get motivated to get off their ass and vote. But what I always try to tell people who think that voting doesn't matter, those forces that do try to limit, like all these Republican states that are passing these laws to try to make it harder to vote, if voting didn't matter, they wouldn't try to take your vote away.
Oh,
they wouldn't spend all that time and effort to take it away if it didn't matter.
That's a spectacular fucking. I really like that one. I like that one. I've never crossed my. That's a good one. That's a really good one. All right. So what I'm going to do real quick, and actually, so I'm going to check. I'm going to start to wrap this up. No, I said that earlier. In time, we wrap up. But Jake 40, second super chat. Thank you very much, Jake. And this time I actually correctly. Wow, I'm learning to read slowly. Unfortunately, the virus doesn't care about politics. The incredibly stupid cause variants like Delta, and will get the rest of us killed too. There's a lot of that. This is a different one though. This is admittedly, yeah, they do, but I do think the people who are the conspiracy theorists, the people who are and if Titan, if you could tell me where to find that post, I don't know if that's in the. I'll quickly check that, but let me look for that. The incredibly stupid are at least in this case hurting themselves far more than they hurt other people. They are hurting other people. They're people who cannot be vaccinated. They're children who cannot be vaccinated, and they're endangering my child because I have a child who cannot be vaccinated. But they are at least, for the first time, which is not true in many of these cases, they are at least hurting themselves more than they're hurting other people. Not by a lot, but they are. The number of times where parents will not take a vaccine, not realizing that the herd immunity is needed to save the lives of people who cannot get vaccines, and the parents are like, well, if one child doesn't have to take it, the other one doesn't. Well, if their child gets whatever the illness is, chances are very good they'll survive it. By them not taking the vaccine, they're increasing the chances that they're going to kill somebody else. So they're not the ones who suffer the consequences of that stubbornness. At least with COVID, I am a bit relieved that the people who are suffering the most are the ones who are being really stupid. They're not the only ones, but they're the ones suffering the most. So okay. Oh, sorry. The last two. So yeah. Apparently, Maya has said that Chantel Brown is corrupt. She's currently under felony ethics probe for abuse of office. She also has no record of voting for things in line with the needs of the people. Dems just put stuff on a platform because they know people want a populist. I am not qualified to.
Yeah, I'm going to call bullshit on that. But I did look up. There is something that popped up last week about an ethics probe. But the thing is, what I'm talking about though is the election integrity. So because Cornel West is claiming that the election integrity is in question. I'm not talking about whether or not she potentially has some other issues, in her background, or that she's done that she might get be on the hook for. That may be true. Yeah, there's obviously an investigation, but that's not the question. The question is the election secure? And to say, well, we lost, so therefore, somebody cheated us. I'm not having that. I didn't accept it from Trumpers, and I'm not going to accept it from Democrats or leftists either.
Well, and so along the lines of certainly, that's what Trump's doing. And it doesn't matter even the quality of the candidate if the candidate won or lost. We shouldn't be questioning the integrity of the elections, at least unless we really have cause to question them. I believe that's your point. Is that
right? Well, that's the thing. Because basically, Maya is saying that he has a reason to be pissed. For sure, he sees things differently than Chantel, and he wants Nina Turner. Fine, he can be pissed, but he's not going out there. His quote wasn't, "Oh, she's unethical. Go look at this investigation." He's like basically corrupt electoral system. That's not what I'm talking about. You address the claims that he made that I'm addressing. Don't talk about side issues. They may be issues in and of themselves. I'm not saying they aren't. But what I'm saying is I'm talking about what he said. And what he's saying is that the electoral system is corrupt. And that is doing harm. And quite frankly, I've been losing respect for Cornel West for quite some time. I used to love him. I'm kind of done with him.
All right, so I'm gonna say what she's saying in response to that, and I think if the two of you would like to discuss this in the VC or on a text chat in the Discord, I think that would be great. I don't want to have the full conversation here because, like you said, we could get into a deep dive on this, and this could be something too that if you would like to we're gonna do overtime next week. We can bring it up and get into a deep dive on it. So her response here was. I guess apparently the DC weighed in ostensibly in the same way that, at least from what I'm understanding, perhaps that the DNC helped Hillary, which was, I do think the system was in fact corrupt against, oh dear Lord, Bernie Sanders. I don't think it's in the same sense that, when Trump says, because Trump is just making up shithole cloth, but so there you go. I think that's worth considering. I'm if the two of you would like to meet in the Discord
Not
afterwards.
especially.
Oh, okay. All right. So Thank you all for joining us. Hopefully, if you've gotten this far, you like the stream, so please do like and subscribe. Tomorrow, we will be discussing COVID. We have a special guest to discuss COVID. And then on Friday, we are going to have our live call-in show. I have a couple of guests I'm hoping can make it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, even if they can't call in and harass me. But our last one was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to doing that again. I'm going to try to rope this guy into that guy right there. That doesn't look right on the camera. It is showing up for the Friday hang. But at any rate, thank you, Joe, for coming, and I look forward to catching all of you. Oh, and I just realized I was going to go to. Wow, almost had an issue. Probably not huge, but YouTube has been acting funky, and one thing they've been doing is when we kill the stream, they actually kill the buffer. So as soon as you stop transmitting, stream's over. It doesn't matter if there's 2 minutes left of buffer. So normally in time, it's a bit more of a streamlined, overtime, it's a bit of a streamlined show. Normally we just go to a bumper that's 5 seconds and the show is over. I'm going to go to the credits because until that issue is solved, I want to have a little time for the stream, if there's any lag, to catch up, so our stream isn't cut short. A lot of our streams have been cut short recently. The credits is going to